Welcome to the Born and Raised Music Podcast. We have a kind of special edition episode today. This one is different than the ones we have done before. This is our first installment of what we hope is going to be many, many installments called Beer Me That Vinyl.
Yes, it's an idea that we've been sitting on for a while, and we're just excited about starting it. It seemed like a good time to jump into it. So if you're not familiar with it, this is a perfect chance for us to kind of talk about it. But Beer Me That Vinyl is the perfect blend of two things that we love most.
Music and alcohol.
Exactly. No, we wanted to pair some of our favorite vinyl records with a four-pack or four-pack in this case of beer, of local beer. And each week or month, depending on how often we end up doing these, you'll have a different option to purchase those, and you can pick them up from the brewery, or we can actually deliver them to you as well.
We got nothing else going on. We will drive them straight to your house.
We will. Hopefully you'll share one of those beers with us. You don't have to. We got our own. It's fine. No, but it's a really cool concept. We're really excited about it. We wanted to have a podcast to kind of talk about the two creators of these products. If you're looking for it and you're not familiar with it, you can go to bornandraisedknox.com, and there's a link on there, or you can just go to beermethatvinyl.com.
About the URL.
I bought that maybe a year and a half ago, and it's like, I don't know what we're going to use this name for, but it's awesome.
Yeah, this is an idea we had probably 6 months ago, and we were like, but when are we going to have the time? And now we have nothing but time.
And if you're wondering, yes, the name is inspired by Andy from The Office. So,
yes.
Lord, beer me strength.
Beer me that disc.
But without further ado, let's jump into this. We've got Tyler Anthony from Cereus. He shares a lot about this record. It's an amazing record. It's white vinyl, which is super cool.
We really get into it, too. He gave us a lot of really good behind-the-scenes nuggets of the writing and production of this record that I was really excited to hear because I've loved this record for a long time.
Yeah, and there's a lot of layers to it. So the fact that he was willing to sit with us and break it down, as a huge fan of Cereus, it was an awesome experience for me. But we also talked to Shane about the beers and get to hear a little bit about the story behind Elst and how it ended up in the North Knox neighborhood, and hear a little bit about these beers that we're going to be drinking while listening to this record.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Came very close to booking Sean Mullins at Old City Pack.
You remember Sean?
Before quarantine happened.
Wow. Sean Mullins.
Everything's gonna be all right. Rockabye.
You are a musician, Kent.
Kent was so excited about it.
I wanted that show bad.
It wasn't that I wasn't also excited, but Kent was very, very excited about it.
He's got a lot of great music other than the one song everybody knows of his, and he's a really good performer as a solo singer-songwriter. And I wanted it.
You know what's funny is that there was a time where I thought being a one-hit wonder sounded terrible. And then I think through some of those songs and how well they did in the 90s, man.
It's one more hit than most people
I would
get.
give so much to be a one-hit wonder in the 90s. The amount of records they used to sell.
Some of those one-hit wonders were like really good bands. I saw Los Lonely Boys at Sundown in the City. Almost said Sundown Central. And those guys could play, man. They were really good.
Oh, man.
All that feels like it has like this nostalgic like sheen to it. Like we've been quarantined for however long, and I'm like, oh yeah, concerts. That sounds so nice. I remember those days, just being outside. I don't even go to that many, but just the idea of them is comfort.
I've been watching TV shows, like obviously filmed well in the past, and anytime people get close to each other or like touch one another, I'm like, no, don't do that. And I have to remind myself, I was like, oh wait, this is a fantasy world of about 3 months ago where you could do that.
It's weird times. Well, you know what? This is a good time though for something like Beer Me That Vinyl. We had actually been sitting on the idea for, I don't know, probably a year now, and no better time than now to get it out there.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's an awesome idea, and I mean, I think it stands out to me because, you know, more and more I find that, myself included, people kind of treat music as background noise because we have such free, unfettered access to it through streaming that it's just the stakes are lower. I was reminiscing with a friend this week about she was describing how it felt to go to the store and like get a CD, and how much you treasured it, and you hung on to every song because you're like, oh my gosh, I have to like make these $15 count, and really got to know the whole experience. And I love streaming services. I think they give so much accessibility to artists, but I do think that kind of moment of really like treasuring a whole project and even the song order and the kind of, being in the world, it's like we could do that. We could just put on an album, but we so rarely do. So I love this idea because in my mind, I hope that it would like facilitate something like that, for someone.
Yeah, I'm not sure the reason for this, but I've been finding myself listening to more records recently. I don't know if it's just because I'm at home more often, or it's just like spending more time in my living room, or if it's because Garrett just built me a kick-ass new record shelf, or whatever the reason is. But I've been digging through my limited as it is record collection and like really giving each record like a full listen more often than I would have, and more often than it feels like I'm streaming music right now.
Yeah,
I've been really enjoying it.
That's awesome. I mean, it makes sense. Actually, streaming is down, so it says all the industry trends, which is kind of like felt counterintuitive, but
yeah, so was podcast listening right as we launched a podcast.
Yeah, we're doing it right, guys. We're doing it right.
A real underdog story,
right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I like the experience of listening to a record because you get to, with a full album, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but there's multiple times within an album that you do something that's really subtle. Maybe it's like a guitar hook, or maybe it's just, oh, we had this really cool concept for this one little bridge of a song. And with streaming, there's a lot of times those songs or those little parts in a song go overlooked. And when you're sitting down actively listening to a vinyl record, like you catch them, and I think it makes you appreciate the entire process of the album more, because that's something that that's an art that I feel like people haven't learned to appreciate. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely live in a time of kind of, candy, junk food, like grab your attention and keep it. And like the streaming space is so competitive, and to kind of like get a foothold in it is so hard to do when you're there. You're kind of hanging on for dear life because as an indie artist, especially, all those streams really do matter, even though people say, oh yeah, you don't make as much. It's true, but also, you want it. So like they have all these algorithms and such that, if people are skipping your song, you're kind of like punished, or the song, just can't do as well. So
right. And speaking of the differences between how we consume music between records and, for example, in streaming, it's like a lot of their heavy streaming time comes when they're doing other things, like working on something, or where they're driving, or their full attention isn't on the music, it's on something else. And I think that might be what one thing accounts for, like the Spotify sound or whatever. It's more of like a vibey kind of, just an aesthetic of music rather than the actual like full on art form itself.
Yeah. For a long time, I've kind of had a gripe. I mean, not that I'm the first one to ever say something like this, because it's certainly not true, but how challenging it is to have music all kind of be in one bucket, but people are coming from so many different angles of what they're trying to do with it. You kind of have people that are looking for pure fun and entertainment. Like you're saying, there are people that are both creating and wanting stuff that's just vibe. And then people like that will craft a song and, bleed over every lyric. And those are just completely different processes, and it can be so challenging to have all those in the same ecosystems and kind of being measured in the same way, because they're trying to do different things. It's just like, yeah, it's the same medium, but man, the goals are so different. And I don't know. I mean, it's not like there's an answer or is even necessarily a problem as much as it is kind of interesting reflection on
Right.
like just how things are and maybe, yeah, I mean, often the stuff that seems to be the most popular kind of falls in some of those categories, you know.
And I was thinking about the
Anyway.
closest analog to this, and I was thinking of food as an example, but actually because this podcast is about vinyl records and beer. I mean, we might as well just shoehorn that analogy in here. Yeah, it's a lot like creating beer. It's like there's a lot of people that love beer, and how they consume it can be completely different on whether they would they would rather go out and get like a really like crafted local craft beer that tastes delicious, or they're like, I don't care, give me the alcohol, give me as much Miller Lite as you can in my system as possible. Yeah. It's just it's just such a broad category that people consume it in completely different ways.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully, not to beat a dead horse, but hopefully, you know, things like what you're doing now with this project, continuing to kind of have maybe this wave of helping people understand those differences, you know, because I think there was a time, to kind of expand on your metaphor, that people didn't, the kind of local craft beer wasn't really a thing, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know half as much as most people, but like I do know that there's kind of been a boom. Be like, oh, you can have like sour beer? Like, what the hell is it? Like, that wasn't. I don't think that was a thing forever. I mean, maybe it was, but just not as like accessible. So maybe we'll get to see, you know, a wave of that with music, or just, you know, people continue to kind of get plugged into, you know, curators or people like yourself that are helping make it more accessible.
That's our hope.
Because people, I think, yeah.
Well, and this whole process for me, like I've been a vinyl collector since college, and so I've known that experience and been familiar with it. But from a beer perspective, I think there's a unique opportunity for at least for me in this process to learn those nuances, because like I know how to appreciate the nuances of music, you know, but I don't necessarily know the nuances of beer, and I'm excited about this process to teach me that. Like, I think it's a part, you know, as listeners in it, and then also as just like people hosting this, is like, yeah, we've got a lot of questions for the brewer because I don't really know, you know, I don't really know a lot of this stuff, but I do love beer and I love that experience. So
yeah, we'll definitely be able to speak a little bit more eloquently about the music that we're going to be talking about than the beer.
Yeah.
The beer is going to be more like, explain it to me like I'm 5, but also can legally drink somehow. Because we're not beer experts in the slightest.
Yeah, we're learning more as we're sharing an office with Knox Brew Tour. So
only insofar as we drink a lot of it.
Yeah.
Just a lot of practice.
Right.
You know?
Well, let's talk about that
cool.
record, Excuses. I've been a huge fan of this record for a long time, and I feel like I'm still like peeling off layers of it. When you sent me the lyrics, just truthfully, as a listener, I listen to lyrics last. I'm just a music-oriented person, so I listen to hooks, and I listen to rhythms, and I listen to melodies first. That's just the first place my ear goes. And then I'll even go to production next. So I'll listen to how things were panned or how things were recorded, and, you know, what a snare sounds like. You know, sometimes, you know, those are the first things that stick out to me. But like, man, the lyrics on this record, the music almost can fool you, if that makes sense, because it has a whimsy vibe to it. Not quite. I wouldn't describe it as whimsical, but like it has a casual and carefree vibe to the melodies and the songs that, if you weren't listening to the lyrics, like, it's a really good juxtaposition in my opinion, because there's some serious content on here lyrically.
Some serious bright content.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Tyler's not amused.
I think we might have frozen.
By that joke.
Did we freeze?
Oh, you froze.
Oh man.
Good. That saved me from the terrible pun that I just made.
Yeah, he made a good pun. No, but I was just saying, like, the music and the lyrics, they complement each other well, because there's a good juxtaposition in those, like the seriousness of a lot of the lyrics and then it's kind of the whimsy of some of the music.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you kind of noting that, and thank you for the kind words. It definitely kind of, that record hit at a funny time in the kind of Cereus Bright development, because we were a newish band, and I think we saw some success with some earlier, especially one earlier song called Stella that was kind of lighter and folk pop vibe, and people really connected with that. And we, again, as a new band, we're kind of naturally kind of being pulled towards what was working, but also kind of had this parallel to that, this interest in kind of the folk heritage of exploring society, and trying to reflect on things that stood out to us, and there's something maybe a little kind of ironic about a bunch of just like young white dudes kind of thinking that they have something new to say, but at the same time the feelings were real, and it was kind of part of, especially for Evan and I, the writers, like those were the things we were thinking about. We were really kind of cresting, like adolescence into young adulthood, and there's all these kind of like, oh whoa moments of kind of what was quote unquote really going on, like maybe the beginning of being woke, dare I say it. You can edit that out. No,
not a chance.
But
I mean, it came out 2016. That was like the time period of like wokeness kind of coming into the forefront in the national ether, zeitgeist, whatever you want to call it. That was kind of the time.
Well, and that was the first year, at least in my recollection, where we started complaining about years themselves. Of like, man, that year was rough. Hopefully next year was better. Right. And it just kept getting worse.
Right.
But I listened to American Dream, and I think it's been relevant. It's a timeless song in a lot of ways, but it feels like, especially right now, feels super relevant. It's amazing how timely it is.
Someone posted about
right now
recently, and I was like revisiting some of those lyrics. I was like, damn, like, yeah, that is. I think some of those are, especially Evan had some really good lines there that I feel like really feel poignant now. But it is ironic, like you're kind of noting maybe some of the, I don't know if it's fully a juxtaposition of something that's a little whimsical or like more accessible, kind of more poppy, with lyrics. If you kind of take a second look, you're like, oh, actually, yikes. Like, it's funny, American Dream has been on this Spotify playlist for years now called Happy Folk. And I always thought that was so funny because really, it's just kind of a big FU, like, nope.
It's like, did you even listen to it? Yeah. Happy Folk Spotify playlist curator.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of to your point about vibes. And like, we kind of we're just like, well, we're going to kind of just, we were touring a ton during that time too. And so we just, when you're playing all these live shows, and we, had played with kind of bands like the Govs all the way to the Oh Hellos, and like all these big crowds were kind of looking for kind of, high energy, anthemic kind of vibes. You could just have this kind of epicness to it. And so I think sonically, a lot of those songs were pulled that direction, for better or for worse, whether that's really what the song wanted to do or not. We ended up doing that just because we were desperate for songs that we could play and get people pumped out.
Right.
Did you ever have a moment performing like that song specifically, or any other, where like you're playing, you're going along, you can see people start to kind of get up out of their chairs, out of their theater chairs, dancing, and then like pause for a second and be like, wait, hold on.
What do you say?
Wait a minute. Probably it was like less rare, because again, people just kind of get going, and like you're saying, Garrett, it's like people, especially on a first listen or listening live, you're not always so lyrically focused. But I definitely had moments of, you saw the guy kind of sitting there with his beer off in the corner going, maybe he's just sober enough to kind of be in that sweet spot of like listening, but like zoned in. It's like, whoa, this is dark, man.
I'm not even sure it's necessarily dark, but like a lot of it was just honest, I think, more than anything. And I don't think you get that in a lot of those, like the 2016 like modern pop folk was very much it almost felt, that trend felt like a McDonald's commercial of just like, we're selling you what you feel like you need. And this record, the sonically kind of matched a lot of those trends, but lyrically it was like, nah, I mean, we have a lot of doubt. We don't really know. And we have a lot of concerns, and we have a lot of these feelings and emotions that don't necessarily line up with that. And that, it just felt real. It just felt like something like when you listen to it of like, it allows itself to be like when we were talking about like, you know, boat beer versus craft beer or whatever, like it allows itself to be music that can be enjoyed in multiple settings. It can be a really good Spotify record and a really good vinyl record, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to do.
That means a lot. That it does. And admittedly, like I said, like I think even since then, like my preferences and tastes have changed. And, you know, like there was maybe like sounds that we were kind of pulling from that maybe aren't as relevant anymore. And so I can like kind of look back and be like, oh, that's weird. That's not how I sound or want to sound anymore. But it matched who we were and what was happening then. And I appreciate that, like, you were able to spend enough time to kind of get to that kind of nugget of, you know, authenticity, because that's something that's always been important to me. And I would say that at least it's all kind of right there, like one layer down from the kind of the high energy ones. Most of them are kind of like pretty reflective.
Yeah.
And it was really, for me on a personal level, kind of right at the breaking point from maybe some old ways of thinking about the world or myself or my faith or, you know, society, just like right at the breaking point. And so a few of those songs were starting to kind of head in that direction, me beginning to kind of ask those questions, really of transition, which, not to do a shameless plug, but
plug away, man.
That is really the trajectory of this album that I'm working on right now, that I'm probably 90% done with. That's on the horizon. That it really is an album of really exploring the last 5 years, which is like, you know, I started heading in a direction now. All those things that were kind of beginning to crack, having those things kind of crumble and deconstruct, is kind of where the last 5 years have been for me as an artist and a songwriter. So it's interesting to kind of think about those songs as like the start of some of these things.
Speaking of looking back on this record, like as you're growing and your tastes are changing, did you have a favorite song from the record, like when it came out, and has it changed to this point?
That's a good question. I think that I always had a strong affinity for Excuses, that the song in there, which is kind of the quietest, most low key one, because I think a lot of what was hard about making that record was us trying to wonder what sound we needed to be kind of having. Mm-hmm. We were just kind of getting enough like little momentum that we were asking ourselves questions we never asked before. We had a manager and a booking agent and some pressure of what should it be? And so a lot of the songs were hard to kind of execute because that was part of the conversation. And I think Excuses just was what it was. And that always just meant a lot to me because it felt a little kind of like unevaluated. And I think it's a beautiful song. Yeah. And I mean, there's a number of ones on there that again are pretty personal. Like there's another song called What Do You Think? That is just a really kind of personal song, again, of me kind of having some, you know, ideological, spiritual shifts from a lot of the people that I was around, and kind of wondering that very thing. Like, what are you going to think about me now that I'm changing, So both of those songs are always stood out to me as like very personal, whereas maybe the other ones were fun, but felt a little bit more fan centric, or
Right.
external rather than internal.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about those kind of decisions even being talked about and on the table of like, what should this be? What should it sound like? While also we're sitting here touting the record's authenticity. It seems like it would take an awful lot of work to be able to like kind of work through those decisions for a band that are like essentially business decisions, but then also be able to get like your true authentic selves to come out. I would imagine that that's a lot of hard work to kind of strike that balance, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for saying that. And it definitely is and was, and I'm not here to say that we did it even perfectly. That's why I'm just frankly kind of thankful that you guys were able to read some of that genuineness through it, because I think, to me, like you were saying earlier, Garrett, some of the songs that came out in that sound are to me pretty superficial, and I think that's probably part of my, like, for me, where some of the sounds of this record it's harder for me to connect with, because the more that sound existed, the more superficial it started to feel. So then I would like apply that to my own stuff and kind of cringe a little bit, be like, no, but it was supposed to be so real, So I'm pleasantly surprised and always happy, and we're always our harshest critic,
Sure.
So,
well, and some of the things that kind of carried that sound, though, I mean, I would assume, and you can probably expand on this, but like a lot of the guitar hooks to me really carry some of that sound. There's some really poppy guitar hooks that kind of resonate between verses and in choruses. How much did the rest of the band have to do with that songwriting process? Did they walk into the studio and write their parts and add to it? Was a collaborative experience?
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of putting anyone kind of too in the spotlight or on blast or anything in between, but I think
do it all.
Do it all. The expose, TMZ, brought to you by Born and Raised. Yeah, Evan brought the biggest pop sensibility to the group, and I think the songs that leaned poppiest were usually ones that him and I wrote together, and or those things that you're describing. Probably 9 times out of 10 came from Evan composing those. And the band definitely, kind of at that time, Luke Bowers on the drums, Matt Nelson on bass, and Jake Smith on electric. We're working on the songs together, but usually the kind of process was, I was writing a song or writing most of the song, Evan was helping finish it, and then we would kind of try to figure it out as a band, but really having Evan and I kind of orchestrate and direct, because, I mean, I think part of, just to be really frank, why Cereus is not continuing on the way that it was anymore, and we're kind of in a new season, is kind of a divergence of sensibilities, both internally of like what we all wanted to do, and I think when we all started, there was a kind of the sense of like, we just want to play music and we like each other and this is fun and let's get out and do it. And years of that, and kind of where the momentum of Cereus was going wasn't necessarily in a direction sonically or, genre wise that everyone was as excited about and willing to continue to give years of their life to. Luke and Jake are now in a band called Jubal, which is awesome stuff. And I say leans more kind of in this raw, like maybe less calculated way, which I think they definitely prefer more. And some of that calculation, like you were saying, about kind of the business stuff, some of that was coming from our team, or some of that was like a self-inflicted insecurity of like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be. Like, to be a professional band is to calculate this much.
Right.
And that's why I even kind of said along the way, I don't even know if that was right.
Yeah.
As much as it's what we tried to do. And I wonder, what would even some of these songs have turned out to be if we weren't asking those questions or whatever. But
it's funny though that it was your debut album that you had a lot of those, because that's usually something that comes with the sophomore record,
right?
And it's interesting that you went through that in that first album, because you went 5 years, 6 years before you put out your first full length. I think that you basically like grew up quicker than most bands grow up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And maybe died quicker than most bands died. Little Benjamin Button story. No, that's not how that works. But yeah, it is what it is. Like I guess I've come to just like I love what we did, and just things just happen too. Like there's a certain level of just fate or destiny or something, like where it's just like, these are the people that like we found each other and we made this thing, and we all brought our different versions to the table of what we thought it was. We all had ideas of what it meant to make music and what it meant to be in a band, and even with that album specifically, what the right answers were. And we all just, did the best that we could. And so in that sense, it's like kind of a beautiful, just like unique time capsule of all those things. And I think moving forward, there was a sense for all of us, like, oh, that was really hard to kind of calculate that. To calculate that much was really difficult. And I think for really all of us, didn't feel right. And the direction that we were getting some opportunities also didn't feel like the direction any of us were excited about. So ultimately, that's kind of what led to the end of that chapter of Cereus Bright, and thankfully can say that we're all, on positive terms, as far as I know. And this is kind of this beauty. I mean, that is life too, just like
Sure.
we're talking about, where, things change and evolve. And I'm thankful to have had that time capsule of that season.
Yeah, I love the thought of a record being a time capsule. I mean, for all intents and purposes, that's what any record is. It's what you all were going through at the time, and through all of the decisions and all of the sessions and all of the collaboration, and all of even the notes that you were taking from your team or wherever. At the end of the day, the record gets put out, and then the end result ended up being this really beautiful record, both sonically and lyrically. And I think a big part of that too is you mentioned all the players that were in that is an all-star cast, man. That's a really strong band. Talking about Jake Smith on lead guitar, you as a band leader, Evan on mandolin, and Luke and
Luke is a great player, but his style definitely fits that
Matt.
record.
Sorry, Matt. Yeah.
That just a straightforward, like Fleetwood Mac kind of style, like I think leans into it. It helps balance out some of the whimsy, if that makes sense. While still feeling poppy, it doesn't swing as much as some of those other records at the time did, and I think it's because of Luke's style of playing.
Definitely so. Definitely so. Yeah, and you're right. Like all those guys, like all of their sensibilities definitely, I think, show up in certain places, especially if you know them and their choices, can see where that has happened. Yeah, it's fun to talk about.
This is going to be the 5th episode in which Jubal gets referenced, and I cannot get Taylor Crest to pick up his damn phone. I tried to call and wish him a happy birthday, but I think he's like in the mountains like off in the wilderness in New Mexico.
I will get him. I'll get him to do it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, he'll answer you. Just call him and tell him to call me back.
It's funny. The record, the band that played on that record was the Outpost house band, because they played 2 shows with you, but then they played. I want to say they played like every other show.
2 shows with Jubal.
They played the Willie and Waylon. Yeah. Willie and Waylon, man, that night was great. What song did you sing? Remind me of what you sing a Willie song. I know that.
Hello Walls.
Hello Walls. That's right. Oh, it was so good. It was so good. And you had
And I think I sang "Ain't It Funny"
Yeah.
too.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said both of those.
You picked two really good ones. I don't know if you had to like fight for
Thank
those songs, but you got lucky to get some.
I threw my weight around a little bit. Like, I'll do it, but on one condition: I get to choose what songs I do.
Oh,
good enough.
That was so fun. Well, so what's next for you? I know that obviously you mentioned at the very beginning, but like this vinyl record sales is going to help fund some new music. Is that coming in the pipeline soon?
Yep. So the kind of postscript of all this, that kind of season of calculation, we hit this moment, really 2018, where whether it was public or not, we were all kind of internally with Cereus like, okay, like I think we all need to find ways to do music that make the most sense for where we all are. And it turns out that was kind of in different, directions. And so I had this kind of big sigh of relief, I think, to not feel the pressure when I picked up my guitar to have to, check so many boxes. So I really just like wrote for, a year or so just on my own. Not even like, oh man, I'm writing towards anything. Just really, this was what's going on, kind of processing all the kinds of songs that I felt like maybe wouldn't fit in Cereus Sprite or like in that kind of version we were doing, kind of were stored up in me and just kind of came out. So finally got to a point where I felt like some of them were ready, and I was like, oh, actually, maybe I could like record something. So in the last maybe 8 months, probably starting in September 2019, I've been starting to record those, and they are now in the mixing stage.
Ooh,
which is
getting
very
close.
exciting.
You're moving along.
And I mean, this is kind of juicy. I don't know if I should just share all this information.
Do it.
It depends on how many people listen to your podcast.
Thousands.
Whatever the right,
thousands.
whatever the right answer is, that's how many.
Garrett Sale is mixing it, so it's going to be just awesome because he's
gotten
incredible. In my opinion,
so
like
good too.
Knoxville's best audio guy, and he knows sound and can wield sound in a way that I don't understand, and we don't deserve him. He's truly talented. So, and he's become actually a much deeper friend in the last couple of years as well. And so it feels not like I'm just like shipping off something to be mixed, but to really be finishing it with him. And
well, we might as well jump in and drop an unreleased nugget on this episode too, right?
Yeah.
Garrett Sale.
I show you mine, you show me yours.
Yeah, exactly. William Wild is going to be the next Beer Me That Vinyl episode. We're pretty pumped about it.
So it all fits together really nice. Yeah, he's a student of production. Like, he really takes it seriously and looks for opportunities to learn. And I've watched him learn the art of producing and mixing over the last probably 5 years. And it's amazing, number one, where he started just out of the gate, but like how far he's also come. And so he remixed the Jubal record and brought that record to life, like in a major way. And I can't wait to hear what he's going to do.
He did the same thing with his own first record too.
Well, cool. I mean, I'm super pumped about the new music. I can't wait.
Yeah.
We've heard a couple of the songs.
Guys.
I feel like live, maybe. No?
Well,
maybe.
No,
maybe not.
I had like a whole kind of like, I'm going to sound a little self-important when I say all this, but I basically had.
What else is being a guest on a podcast for, man? Come on.
That's true. My ego. I basically had kind of like a dozen leftover band songs or ones that I had kind of written that felt in that category. And I was like, oh, I need to just like knock these out. Like, I wonder if I can kind of do like a live album and like kind of like fast track these and have them be a little kind of like loose and raw. And I taught them, I got some guys together, taught them, a couple of the guys from the old, like Jake and Luke were part of it, played at the Outpost and premiered some of those, and even got a couple of days at a studio here in Knoxville. And I just got to this point where I wasn't excited about them. it was kind of like a business move, or it was kind of this like, oh, I should do this, you know? Like again, it was kind of strategic rather than like artistic. And I just stopped. I just was like, I don't have the energy to get this to the level I want it to. And I only put out one song from that kind of batch, which was All Night, which I put out like last year. I kind of just like to help my own mind, just be like, I just spent however much time pursuing this idea, and that sucks. Yeah. But so here's something, you know, and it's not like the best in the world. It's a little just raw, but it's just like, okay, like here's just a kind of thing to kind of kick the can down the field. But really, this next batch of songs are much quieter, and they're just at a caliber and a level of like, they're so much more personal and so much vibier, and it's such a different sound than I've ever, I feel like, had before. That actually just feels more true to me. You know, some of the kind of folk twang stuff that I've maybe kind of picked up by being in Knoxville or being like playing with the people I played with or around, I've begun to wonder if it's even me. I'm just like, why am I singing with the twang? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a country singer. I don't necessarily write those kinds of songs, and it can be fun to play. But so I said, I would say maybe there's a song or two that I kind of like steered back into this direction, but probably to me they're all pretty new.
It was just like muscle memory at first when you were like, wait, what is this?
Yeah, you just get it, you know, and it's fun, and it's easy. It's in some ways it's like kind of the path of least resistance, and it's like learning to play something live. It kind of takes, you just like lean that direction, and then I kind of walked away and be like, I don't really have the energy for that. Like really, the spirit of these songs for me is so personal, and they need to be crafted in this very kind of like much more quiet, much more intentional, kind of careful way. That through no fault of the people I was working with, really just, it was my own creative vision that I hadn't fully articulated, and kind of going through, you know, that process, I was like, oh, okay, this is actually what it needs to be. So I found some guys in Nashville who I connected with, and that kind of gave me a really healthy kind of sonic clean slate, because there was no like, no history, you know, and it's not even that there's like baggage at all, as much as it is just different people and different sensibilities and different perspectives, just to kind of like put me into a new spot. Because I'd really only made music with the people that I had, and so I felt like I kind of needed to put myself in a new situation.
Have you ever considered going like the Jeff Tweedy route and just creating an endless number of side projects for all of the different kind of musical machinations? Like when you feel that urge to write a twangy country song, like you're like, I'll just do an EP under a different name and make that be one of my many side projects.
I have.
Yeah?
Honestly, I have.
Because I want you to embrace that twang. I want to hear the twang, man.
I want to see Tyler go full cowboy.
Yeah. You look good in a cowboy hat.
He put on some interesting suits that make him, I mean, you pull off a sharp cowboy look before. Well, I think it's interesting though that like, and I can't imagine, we'll have to ask the brewer from Elst if this happens in the beer scene, but like music is one of the few things that like people will literally record an album and then just throw it away because they're like, that's not what I wanted. And they'll just leave all their stuff on the floor like it was no big deal. And I think that's such a unique thing to music, that like you can go through so much effort and then just not put it out, you know? And I think it just speaks to the amount of effort you have to put into the music to make the statement you're trying to make. And sometimes it's not even just, it's like convincing yourself more than it is convincing anyone else of like, I didn't realize that I was trying to say this. And it took me a whole record to realize it, you know?
It's so true, man. And I mean, you're probably right. I mean, I suspect it's like, you know, Elst, you know, they concoct something, they taste it, like, this is fine.
Yeah.
But like, if our name's on the line, like, can we put out a fine beer? Yeah. Like this, like, and especially if you're kind of like, you know, independent, you know, like I am as an artist, maybe they are as like a brewery. It's kind of like, can we even afford to be like fine. Like,
Yeah.
is that the standard we want? Like, the reason we're doing all this is like we're trying to do something great, and maybe down the road, like if I have more of a reputation or something, I don't know, or they do, like you can afford to be a little riskier and be like, okay, now I'm going to do this over here because I've kind of already established myself, and like this thing is like a fun exploration rather than like a stake in the ground.
Exactly.
I think because it's been so long for me since I have put out music, it just needs to be like, this album just needs to be, it's just so important to me. Yeah. And the songs on it aren't just throwaway songs. So I'm really excited. It's been a long time coming, but the end is in sight, and I'm excited to be talking about it just because it's what I've been thinking about for like a long time. Yeah. Most days I think about it in some capacity.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I can't wait. Yeah. I know Gary can't wait either. It's going to be great. So if you're listening to this record, if you're listening to this podcast, excuse me, stop what you're doing. Go to bornandraisedknox.com and find the Beer Me That Vinyl page and buy this record because it'll help Tyler fund his new record.
Yeah. You can also go to beermethatvinyl.com too.
Oh, that's right. You got the URL.
I got the URL. Also, okay, tell me a little bit about Elst now that we're talking about it. Like, I know that was a choice of yours, and that's in your neighborhood. It's kind of a homegrown brewery. You have a favorite beer there. You also, is that a place you go often?
Yeah, I would say. I mean,
or went often.
Yeah.
I have gotten a growler even since quarantine has occurred. So
yeah. What's your favorite there?
It's right down the road from me. So I pass it every day, walk by it, and it's up kind of in North Knoxville for those who don't know.
North Knox?
And even just like, when it was kind of being developed and whatnot, it's right next to Steamboat. It just was kind of this exciting, what it meant in terms of stuff kind of coming into the area. And I know gentrification can have a shitty side to it, and so I know that can be kind of a complicated topic. But I also know that there are places that are just completely unused, and just sitting, buildings. So it's cool to just have, I mean, for me on a personal level, you have to have spaces in a city where people can try out new ideas, where stuff is affordable for them to make an attempt. So if you're a new brewery, you have to have affordable space, and I'm just thankful that like it happened down the road from me. And that not only that, but it actually is delicious. My favorite beer there is the Rye Stout. I'm a big kind of like dark beer. My wife and I love dark beer, but sometimes it can get so heavy, it can almost get kind of syrupy. Not theirs, but just in general. Or people are so kind of crazy with the dark beer that you're like, whoa, okay. So this is very like drinkable, smooth. Just absolutely love it. Yeah, it's just like open and it's not too loud or crowded. I sound like an old man, but there'll be like days after work where I'm just like, oh, I can like swing by and just like have a beer, and unwind and check a few more emails. And you got a beautiful back little yard area.
It's very quiet.
They're great people too.
Oh,
just really nice. So,
well, we're gonna have him.
And Nora.
I think we're gonna have Shane on.
Oh, good.
And we're going to tag it on to the end of this podcast and talk about the beer. I mentioned to him, and he was like, man, I didn't realize that. He was like, I know Cereus Bright. I don't know Tyler. And he was like really excited about it. Because like he was like, wait, I didn't even know that he was coming in here. So like it was exciting to see you guys be fans of one another and not even really have that relationship.
That's sweet. I wonder if he's full of shit or if he actually knew that. But you can ask him.
I believe him.
That's fine. I lie all the time about stuff.
Yeah.
So. No, he's really sweet. You can show a picture of me. I feel like he would know because like we have like this like we see each other and like we know each other.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm a regular at enough places that people know. Yeah, that's a guy who buys beer from us, but like doesn't know who I am.
And it helps that he always wears the same hat. It's like this is the hat guy.
It's the guy with a hat. That one guy in Knoxville that has that hat and walks like a Sasquatch.
Your words, not ours.
That's right.
Well, Tyler, thanks for doing this with us. We're really excited about it. And
Oh man,
I can't wait to see what this thing grows into. And I appreciate your just your willingness to explore and try something with us.
Yeah, to be our guinea pig, basically.
I'm honored. I'll get to say I knew them when. Well, guys, thanks for doing what you're doing for the local scene and getting creative and putting energy into something.
Yeah.
You know, when you could easily just not do something, and this is just it's very cool, and I love the idea because it just triangulates like so many things that I think are really positive.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't do it. I took one day of like watching all of Netflix, and I was like, I'm done with this. I have to do something. I can't. Yeah, I can't just like sit at home during this. We got to figure something out. So we had this idea in the back pocket for a long time. Garrett's idea. Congrats, Garrett. And here we are.
Bada bing.
Bada bing.
Well, Tyler, we can't wait for the new music. Please send it to
us
as soon as you can. We won't share it with the whole world. We just want to hear it.
Oh, maybe I will when the time comes. Okay. Get you a little, wet your beak a little bit.
Cool, man. Well, so hey, Shane, tell us a little bit about Elst. I know you guys are in the North Knox area. How did you guys get your start?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, we were 4 Northwest Knoxville neighbors that had a passion for craft beer and decided to turn the dream into a reality and start our own brewery. There's 4 of us that founded it. And we looked for property for, we established the LLC in early 2016, and we looked for property for quite some time. And then the building on North Central here in the Oakwood Lincoln Park area came up, and we really fell in love with the neighborhood and bought the building in 2017 and brewed our first batch in October of 2018. So, and we opened our tap room in July of 2019. So, excited to be in the neighborhood, a part of it, and so far so good. So we've been distributing beer for about a year and a half, and we've had the tap room open for about getting close to a year, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was back. It was last year, and I remember it opening, and it breathed so much life into that neighborhood. Steamboat's right there, Pizzeria Nora's right across the street, but it's brought a lot of just a lot of great energy to that neighborhood. So we're excited about you guys being there. We're excited about the beer you're making. What made you guys get into beer? Like what's the passion behind that beer for you guys? Like what gets you up in the morning to continue to make beer?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it probably all started with Dan Leonard, who's our head brewer. He'd been brewing beer for a decade plus or so. And every once in a while he'd fool around and make it for his office and everything. And he worked at Discovery, or still works at Discovery, but everyone just really loved his beer and his product, and he wanted to share it with as many people as he could. And just over time, started, turning that dream into reality, I guess. So, for us, it's really about when we think about making beers and recipes, we think about the end result, what we want it to taste like, and we kind of reverse engineer it from there. These 2 beers that we have, we're really excited about. It's our first 2 canned packaged products. So a little extra special meaning for those for us, for sure.
Yeah. And I know that you guys have been really focused on, obviously packaging and to-go orders recently, just with everything going on. How's that been for you guys? Have you guys been taking it in stride?
Yeah, absolutely. We're fortunate to be able to offer a curbside service that's compliant with the city ordinances and still be able to, get our beer in the hands of our customers. I think probably need it now more than ever. It's definitely package has always been in the plan for us, but it definitely put priority on doing it sooner. Yes, we're lucky to be in a position to be able to pull that off.
It sounds like us with the podcast. We were planning on doing this down the road, and then once there were no shows to promote, we were like, well, we better launch this now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's just, yeah, it's good to be able to stay connected and, during unexpected times, so it's fortunate.
Well, we were really excited when Tyler from Cereus, we reached out to him about doing this, and we were like, we want to make sure that the beer and the music go well together. And he immediately was like, oh, we got to do Elst. We got to do Elst because, he lives in that neighborhood, and he was so excited to have that as a neighborhood bar and a neighborhood brewery for him to visit. He often goes in there. He said he actually talked to us a little earlier this week, but he mentioned he just being able to stop in there in the afternoons and enjoy the neighborhood vibe that it brings. I think his favorite is the rye stout, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. He just said you guys crush it with that one. I'm more of an IPA guy myself, so I'm excited about the IPA. But what was your thoughts when you heard Cereus Bright was a big fan of Elst?
Yeah, that definitely carried a lot of meaning for us. Again, when we found the location, we really fell in love with the neighborhood, and just being able to do this with someone that lives in the neighborhood and comes to visit. We really tried to set up Elsewhere as a community spot, for the Oakwood Lincoln Park area, Old North, Fourth and Gill. So just a lot of extra meaning for us, and that's one of the things that we do as well as beer makers is we like all different styles. So we have a lot of different variety, IPAs, rye stouts. Yeah, for sure. It's fun.
Well, what can the people who are buying this bundle, what can they kind of expect from these two beers? We've got the IPA and the Ivory Stout. Absolutely,
yeah. Definitely two unique beers. I think the double IPA has served me really well during this quarantine. Clocks in at 9.5%.
Yeah.
It's that'll serve you well.
Very well balanced. Yeah, for sure. It's a very well balanced beer. A lot of hops balanced with the malt character. So we used Citra, Simcoe, and Chinook in it as the hops. Very, very nice balanced beer. The 9.5% is well disguised. It's a good one for sure. The Ivory Stout is a fun style. The whole idea behind this style is basically you're trying to emulate a stout without using roasted barley. So it's a pale beer versus being a dark beer. And we used to get some of the profile of a stout. We added lactose for a little bit of creaminess, wheat malt, and then additions of vanilla, and aged it on cocoa nibs to kind of give it that chocolate roasty flavor and aroma. And it really leaves a nice aftertaste of chocolate in your mouth. So it's a delicious one for sure.
Dang, I want a beer this moment.
We're going to stop by here in a minute.
Yeah, we're open for curbside.
Well, I can't wait to put that record on and sit down. I'll be probably sitting down with the double IPA. I have a feeling that Kent's going to pick up that stout.
Oh yeah, stout's got my name on it.
But we're really excited about it. I hope everyone who's listening enjoys it as well. And hey, Shane, thanks again for your time today. We're really excited about it, and we'll be coordinating soon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for including us in this, and I hope it goes well. And thanks everyone for supporting local musicians and beer makers and everyone, artists.
Absolutely. And hey, Shane, I just moved into the Oakwood neighborhood, so once all this is over, I'll probably be in there. You'll get to see my mug pretty often, I would imagine.
Oh, fantastic. I can't wait for it.
All right, thanks, man.
Take care.
Okay. See y'all. Bye.
I